Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the CanSpace Solutions webinar series. I'm Artashis Tumanov, and I'm glad you can join us today for a brand new session in our client exclusive series. This one's called GEO and the Future of Search. Now, if you're new to CanSpace, we're proud to be Canada's leading domain register and web hosting provider, powering thousands of businesses nationwide. And this webinar is part of our ongoing commitment to helping you, our clients, navigate what's next in the online world. Today, we're diving into something that's changing everything we know about visibility online, Generative Engine Optimization, or GEO. With AI tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini, redefining how people find information, the search landscape is evolving and fast. And GEO is the next frontier in making sure your company or your website and your content stay visible in this new reality. And to help us make sense of it all, we've got a true expert joining us, Noah Desmarais, SEO specialist at SEO Plus. It's one of the Canada's top digital marketing agencies. Noah, as far as I know, has got a background in communications from the University of Ottawa, and he has worked across multiple marketing disciplines before finding his calling in SEO. And today he's here to break down how GEO is changing the search journey, like what drives AI generated answers and the key pillars of GEO success. You'll also get practical tips you can start using right away. And of course, we'll wrap up with a live Q&A for which we'll open the floor after Noah's presentation. So if you've got questions, you can raise your virtual hand to ask a question by voice or simply drop them in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Noah, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to get into this presentation, and yeah, we'll have a question period after, so happy to answer any question it may be, and yeah, don't shy away. So I'll just share my screen real quick. Perfect. Alrighty. So we'll get right into it. So GEO foundations and the future of search. Um, so yeah, just a quick overview here. Search is evolving. We've seen Google dominate SEO search traffic for over 20 years, and they've had a big piece of the pie during that whole period. We're seeing, within the past year or so, a bit of a shift in who's, getting that market share and kind of hoarding up some of that search traffic. So I put a couple stats here just to kind of paint a picture. 18.8% of search results are appearing with AI overviews, which is what you see on the image on the right here. So that bit, the little panel that gives you just a quick response to what you're searching. We're seeing a ton of that appear across searches, and it's only going to grow a bit more. 37.4% of Google searches now result in clicks. So that's actually a decrease from what we've seen in the past. There's a term called zero-click search or zero-click SEO. That's just what we're seeing. If people are getting their answers directly on their search engine or their AI model, they don't need to always go to the website, right? So this is becoming more and more of a thing. And then, some major websites are seeing 60 to 80% traffic declines. So companies that I think like Forbes and HubSpot have reported or seen drops of traffic like this. So with all this, yeah, it can be a bit concerning. You might think that your SEO efforts are going down the drain, but not to worry. There's a ton of opportunity with this as well. So that brings to us GEO, or Generative Engine Optimization, which is essentially, how you're going to optimize your website to be cited in all these different AI models. So whether that may be ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Google AI Overviews, Anthropic. There's endless tools, and there's only going to become more and more options that might fit your specific needs. GEO is just the practice of making sure that you show up there. So just think about it as SEO, but for AI models. That's the most simple way to put it. And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It's just that's the trendy word right now, and it could always change, right? So you may ask, why should I put some focus into this now? Is it too early? Is it too late? Or is it even worth it at all? I would say it's definitely worth it, and I would jump on it as soon as you could, just because I'll go over a few stats here. The average ChatGPT prompt, for example, is 24 words. Whereas if you look on a Google search, most keywords that we're usually targeting for SEO is maybe 2 to 3 words long. 24 words is a lot more detailed and a lot more conversational. So you can sort of look at this as ChatGPT is often doing a lot of the selling and qualifying your leads before they even make it to your website or before they hear about your service or your product, which is super valuable, right? As they use this platform, and it gets to know a bit more about them. They're really getting an idea of what their persona is or what their avatar might be. Another really cool stat is there's over 400 million users just across ChatGPT and Perplexity, and that doesn't include all the other AI models that people are using, right? So as we mentioned, the market share of search in general is starting to decrease a bit, right? Google is losing a bit of that share. Google is by no means disappearing. I wouldn't say that, but this is just a new channel for you to get traffic from that provides a bit more of a different approach for the leads that you might be getting. And yeah, users always will be expecting like immediate and comprehensive answers, right? So that information is going to be a bit different. I'm sure some of you guys might have noticed, like, at least for myself, back in the day, I would always search for something on Google that, I knew no one else was looking up because it was so specific and it was hard to get a direct response to that. And nowadays, if you go on ChatGPT or any AI model, you can easily find that response because it'll really tailor it to what exactly you're looking for. And another really cool example is Perplexity is experimenting with the transactional features, so a one-click checkout. But I can only imagine that as we move forward, these features will start to just grow across all platforms, where you might see easier ways for people to purchase, to sign up for things, to give you their contact information, to schedule a demo, or request a quote. So these, the possibilities will be endless, and the reason you want to get on it now is because there's not an easier time than right now to really get ahead of the curve. So the goal is always going to be you want to be the source that the LMs are going to cite and reference. So a bit more about the new search journey, right? So you have traditional search, which we all know is, you make a Google search, you'll end up on a website, and then that usually will either convert or, bounce from your website. The AI first approach is that you're making a search within an LLM model and you're getting a direct response that's really tailored to what your question is and most likely get to answer, all the things that you might be inquiring about. And then they may or may not go to your website, right? So the challenge here is how do you get found if the search engines are already providing the answer? So a bit more into how AI gets its answers, just to give you an example of how these models in most cases work. A lot of them use like the RAG approach, which is a retrieval augmented generation. That's a fancy word, but the simple process is there's two steps. There's the retrieval part, so you make your search, and when they ask a question, the AI is going to go through its databases of information, right? Whether that's websites, PDFs, books, even videos, right? So images are even getting a bit better at getting crawled. Think of it as a bit of a librarian. That's you come up to it and you say, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and that librarian is going to go through its whole library and just gather the most relevant information that they can provide to the user afterwards. And then with that comes the generation aspect of it. So the AI model is going to create a natural language answer with the citations. So it'll usually, if you've seen on ChatGPT, for example, there'll be a couple links to where they got that information from, which is ideally where you want to show up, right? You want to ensure your content is that first choice in that retrieval step. So how do we optimize for all this? We organize it into the 4 pillars of GEO success. So this is a quick overview here, and then I'll kind of go into detail on each one. So we have semantic relevance, EEAT ecosystem, site speed and structure, and then persona-driven content at the middle of the funnel. So going into semantic relevance, the best way to look at it is that LLMs are thinking in context as opposed to keywords. So that's a really big shift that we're seeing when we're comparing SEO to GEO. In a traditional SEO approach, we're targeting certain keywords, whereas in AI, we're really looking to dominate a certain topic, a certain type of context that we can really establish ourselves with. So a couple things that work in this case is conversational and long tail content. So really getting in detail on specific items goes a long way. Using cues like TLDR and summary Q&A. I'm sure if you guys make a search, you'll often see what the result is a quick and straight to the point answer. So making sure you're including that in your content will not only help you appear in that a bit more, but when AI models are looking through millions of websites, they're looking for that quick summary of what this web page is about. And then real, vibrant, and then human-led content. So making sure that the quality of the content is not lazy, because you might be producing a lot of content, but you want to make sure that it connects and resonates with the human as well, right? So that's a really big one as well. And then a couple action items, right? So how can you go right now and just optimize this? I would say you want to write, as I mentioned, how people ask questions. So think in the lens of a user. You can use queries from ChatGPT or Answer the Public. So for example, Answer the Public is a really good tool that will give you a bit more of those long tail questions that people are asking, and even sometimes associate like search volume with it. So very valuable tool there. And then you can even go into ChatGPT and ask what are some common questions that this type of potential client might have for this potential service. So really getting niche with it is always beneficial. You can build out topic clusters and topical maps. So this is the idea of really focusing in on what your core services or products are and building out a planned content. So for example, if you're selling roofing services, you have at the top your roofing services, and then below that, all the different types of roofing services. And then for each one, you'll build specific content for that service. So if you're doing shingle roofing, below that one, you could start talking about, this product of shingle roofing versus this one, the benefits of shingle roofing during this season. You can really get niche with it, and that's what these AI models are looking for, right? They're looking to answer these very specific questions that users have. And lastly, what comes with that topical and topic content planning is the linking structure. So always making sure that you're linking relevant pages towards each other is always going to be super beneficial for not only your SEO, but also your GEO, and these AI models will be able to crawl through your website in a more effective manner. The next step is EEAT ecosystem. So this is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Essentially, this is a big part of traditional SEO as well, but just making sure that you're displaying your expertise or your knowledge on a certain topic, right? Whether that's through certifications, accomplishments, case studies, whatever trust signals you can apply on your content will is always a good ranking factor, and the same applies in GEO. So the only difference is that within GEO, we're seeing it become a lot more important, not only on your website, but across the web. So AIs are going to reference brand mentions. So think about all across the internet, whether that's on social media, specific websites. If someone is talking about your brand, um, that is something that AI models are going to consider. Citations from credible sources. So similar to traditional SEO, if you're getting links, or if your work is being mentioned on a different website, that's another thing that AI models are looking for. And then the third one, which is a really big one that we're seeing right now, that ChatGPT, for example, is referencing, are websites like Reddit or Quora, where just individuals are having conversations about a business, about a product, about a service, about an industry. So that is a really big one that you're seeing. If someone is talking about your brand on these platforms, chances are it might get pulled up into search results on these AI models. So to expand on this and to kind of what we would say own your own narrative, how you can influence your narrative, is to join some of these communities, right? So on Reddit, if you have a roofing company, I keep going back to that example, but if there's a community for roofers, maybe in your province, right? Sometimes it can get pretty niche. You can join those communities and just make sure to provide valuable content, answer people's questions, and make yourself a bit known in the space as a professional. Another good option is to publish quotable PR and media content. So this is either content that other websites or blogs might quote and link back to you, or you can also reach out to services. Us at SEO Plus, we have a PR team that reaches out to companies, and we write blogs for our clients, for example. So that's a good approach there. Directory listings, they're also very important. This applies a lot to local SEO, so within like your Google business profile, making sure that your info is consistent across the board. But the same thing applies here in these GEO models, right? So we want to make sure across all these directories, the big ones, but there's also a ton of niche ones that might be beneficial to whatever your industry might be. So if there's a roofer directory, right, making sure that you're in there, and then that what is being written about you is accurate. The third step is site speed and structure. So this is a really important thing when it comes to AI models crawling your website. You want to make sure that your content is fast and very accessible. So ideally, your site loads in less than a second. Your content is visible in HTML. So all that means is that your content in the code of the website is actually readable, which most like WordPress sites, for example, will usually cover that. And text is still favorable over images for now. So these AI models are still, working on getting better at breaking down images and kind of getting an idea of what they might be related to. So text still kind of reigns supreme there, but it is getting better. And there's a couple ways you can optimize for this. So ideally, you want to have one idea per paragraph. So structuring your content in a way that is digestible for not only the user, but also for the models that are looking through websites and choosing which one they want to go with. Schema markup, which is a form of structured data that just provides context and code to search engines and AI models on what your website's about, right? It'll give basic information like the address, the business name, the industry, things like that. Always beneficial, and we're seeing it. It remains very important for GEO. And there's LLM's text as well, which is a newer feature that a lot of websites are using. If you look on the right here, and I included a link, it's the LLM's text directory. So these are websites that are sort of following this movement, which essentially is a page that you'll add on your website that provides instructions to different AI models. So it'll tell them if they're allowed to index your site, which obviously you would want, and it gives a few like resourceful links on your website that they can get started off and get some context about your business or your product. So yeah, it's not promised or guarantee that every AI model is using this as a reference, but it's good to cover all your bases. And lastly, fresh timestamps. So just making sure that your content is fresh and new. AI models like to see that, of course. They want to make sure they have the most latest and updated content. So a great tip there is even if you have an old blog for maybe 5 years ago, but you could use a bit of a refresh to make sure it's relevant to today. Go ahead and refresh it, and then you can republish it as posted today. So that's always beneficial. And the fourth one we have here is persona driven content at the middle of the funnel. So the generic like what is content, the very like high level approach search is a bit of a thing of the past. People are looking for very specific questions and nuanced questions, right? If you look on the right here, this image kind of gives you an idea. You would have best CRMs, and that's kind of the old approach. And now people are looking up what's the best CRM for a small e-commerce store, limited budget, no sales team. And a bit of a caveat here is that with voice search, right, it's becoming even myself, I find myself using it a lot more now where I just talk to an AI model and I can get a lot more specific with my search. So just making sure that you're building responses and content for these specific types of people. Yeah, a middle of a funnel focus. So, there's a top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel, right? Middle of the funnel is someone that is really interested into this product or service and looking to kind of move towards that next step, which would be the bottom of the funnel when they're ready to pull their card out and make that sale. Um, and yes, solving pain point solutions for clients is big. So a few ways that we can implement this into our content to help rank for this is X versus Y comparisons. So comparing two products, comparing two services together, always is your best bet. Um, Really tailoring content for a specific persona or avatar. So best solution for example, you could say best roofing material for individuals that live in this province, right? You can really get granular with it, and the more you can build out that base and the different variations, the better you'll do in these AI models. And then this is a great one as well that I love to use even with traditional SEO, but also with an AI is getting FAQs that your clients, people in sales calls are asking you, right? That there's no better way to see what people are thinking than using the questions that you're already getting and then building content out of that. Always, it's a underused approach, but it's very simple, right? So just making sure that you're covering all concerns and objections that people have. It's people are really focused on the things that they already know, but you more so want to cover the concerns and things that people are worried about, right? To kind of reassure them that things will go smoothly. And lastly, as I mentioned, just yeah, segmenting into different verticals and personas. So you can really start, you know, building different variations of this location with this age group or this career path with this company. You can really start mixing things up and the possibilities are endless. So now, we cover the bases here, but the big thing as well is to measure how you're doing, within your AI efforts, right? So there's a few things that are really important to make sure you're tracking. So, like brand mentions, as we talked about previously, is a big one for sure. Citation tracking AI responses. So that's how many times, how many different types of chats you're appearing in, for example. And then zero click engagement metrics, which is still a newer thing, but we're seeing it become more and more important to follow. A couple of tools that can help with this. Obviously, Google Analytics still remains really powerful as a tool. You'll just by default, you'll be able to see like referrals from ChatGPT, other models as well. It'll let you know that traffic is coming from those sites, but you can even build out, like for example, at SEO Plus, we build out custom segments for AI referrals. So to really get a bit more of a detailed approach on where this traffic is coming from. There's also brand monitoring tools like Mention and Brand 24. So that's just to get an overview of how your brand is being talked about online, how many times it's being mentioned, what the sentiment might be. There's Peak.ai, which is a tool that we use a lot at SEO Plus. It essentially is you'll provide it some prompts that you think are relevant to your service, and it'll continuously run searches from logged out accounts. So the big thing there is that it's a logged out account because there's no context given to it. So it won't be influenced by your previous chats, which happens a lot in these AI models. In this case, it's kind of like a clean sheet that it's doing a search from, and then you can see if you're ranking or not, or showing up in those results. And there's WayK as well, which is another great tool that we use. This is a bit more of an overview of your geo performance, so it'll cover how you're doing in certain models because you might do really good on ChatGPT, but not so good on Claude, for example. That's a common thing because these models do have a couple tweaks on how they get their information, right? So it's good to get an overview on how you're performing and then how certain topics are being represented by your business and then where you can improve. And there's a couple of core KPIs that you can watch. So yeah, as I mentioned, the share of the model, how often you're appearing versus your competitors in certain models, the brand mention accuracy and frequency. So to see if the right message is being conveyed about your brand, or maybe sometimes it can be mistaken with another business, or there's maybe the wrong people have the wrong idea of what your company is. This is a great way to check. AI referral traffic is big, right? So as we mentioned, you can check this within Google Analytics. And then the sentiment analysis, so how positively you're being portrayed. Now, this can be a bit overwhelming, and I think having a good starting point is important. So I sort of laid out, three geo tips that you can get started with, right, to kind of build that foundation. So the first one would be to create Q&A content that's matching those real AI queries. So as we mentioned, um, think of what people are already asking you, talk with ChatGPT and Claude and see, what get an idea of what the sentiment is as well. Because what they can do, right, is go through those Reddit communities, things like that, and gather what people are wondering. And then it's a great opportunity for you to build content out of that. Yeah, getting active in those communities like Reddit and Quora. So yeah, just building your name as the industry leader, as an expert in that field. And even a bonus tip is like having the account be named after your brand, always a plus. And then really making sure that when you're answering questions, that you're not being too salesy. You're not pushing a sale. You're just providing the value. Uh, and I always believe if you're doing that, it'll benefit you a lot more than just trying to sell things to people in these communities, right? Other thing too is that you'll probably get banned or your post deleted if you do that. So a thing to watch out for there. And lastly, adding those summary sections on the key pages. So if you have a blog that answers a specific question, start the blog off by that little window that it gives a TLDR and summary that answers that question, and then you can go in detail afterwards. Not only will that, satisfy most users, and they'll appreciate that, but also, as I mentioned, the AI models are looking for that right away. So if you can put at the top of that page, it'll make the AI robot's job a bit easier, right? So a big one there. Yeah, so those are three tips that we can get started with today. And yeah, just to paint a bit more of a picture of how it's working for some of our clients, right? So we have two case studies here that we compared, from June to August 2025 versus March to May 2025. The first one is a multi-location phone repair company. They have, hundreds of locations across the country. They grew their AI overview impressions by 61%, and then the conversions from AI traffic increased by 220%. So definitely seeing a big boom from this AI traffic. And then a B2C and B2B electronics company also grew their AI overview impressions by 98%, and their conversions from AI traffic increased by 40%. So I would say it's fair to say that this stuff works, right? There's still a lot of uncertainty by I'm sure most business owners because it's such a new thing. But there's ton of opportunity here, and I would say this is the most opportunity you'll probably ever see because as it grows, it's just going to get more and more competitive. So you really want to cement yourself as, one of those sort of pioneers as a ranking in these AI tools. So I would say, yeah, definitely important to make sure this is on your radar and acting upon it as soon as possible for sure. Now, yeah, as I mentioned, it can be a bit overwhelming. You might not know where to start, or you might not know how your site's performing right now. So, yeah, as a part of the seminar, all members get a free geo audit from us at SEO Plus. You can email us at info@seoplus.com, or we have this link here that I'll share in the chat afterwards. Essentially, what this will do, you can see it a bit on the right, but it gives you an overview on how you're ranking on different models. It'll navigate through your links, see if there's any errors there, and then give you a bit of a look on your knowledge map. So it'll show you, how your site's being portrayed at and what they think the main topics of your site are. So that this is a great way to see if maybe you're covering, I've seen far too many websites that are chasing trendy topics that are not related to their service. So they might rank well for this topic, but has nothing to do with what they're actually trying to sell or trying to offer as a service. So this is a great way to see if your core topics are being portrayed to these search models. And this also applies to traditional SEO, right? And it'll also will provide you some actionable insights that you can, take action on right away. And even if you would like to speak to one of our account managers, they can provide a bit more detail on these reports as well. So completely free, a great starting point, and then from there you can kind of take it into your own hands if you'd like, and grow your AI search presence. So that's about it for today in terms of our GEO presentation. But yeah, happy to answer some questions, and I hope you guys learned a thing or two. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Noah. Great presentation. I love that you included so much data in those slides. I'm a big fan of data. So seeing how quickly AI is evolving is quite not sickening, but it's quite impressive. I'll kick things off. I have a couple questions. In the meantime, again, if anyone has a question, uh, questions are welcome. If you want to come in and talk to Noah with voice, just raise your hand, or you can submit your questions in the chat. Um, you mentioned, let's talk about, because I want to keep things as practical as possible for people watching, because it's mostly, people, small, medium-sized businesses, and entrepreneurs, or people have a content-based website. You mentioned that, yeah, as much as like Google Analytics, they do give you um, some data as to where the traffic is coming from. I mean, you could see ChatGPT or you can see Perplexity as a source. Um, is there a way to, uh, I guess, set it up as to see what prompts kind of led for people finding your website? Or because you mentioned you guys have a custom segment, I guess, that you built for Google Analytics in your company. But is there a way to kind of like granulate that a little bit more without having any kind of custom work done?
Yeah, so the big issue that we're seeing with AI search is the privacy aspect. So, for example, that peak tool that we use, they take a logged out account approach because the AI models are not going to want to share what people are searching for in respect for their privacy. That's why you sort of have to put together prompts that you think are relevant to your business and see how they perform through those types of accounts. When it comes to analytics, the way that we sort of segment the way we track data is we can get
Mhm.
really detailed on the referral source so we can see where it's coming from, but also where that user will navigate to on your website. Google Analytics is a beast of its own, and you can get very specific. And there's tons of little tips and tricks that people are. We have a whole department at our team that specializes in that, and I usually hand it over to them because yeah, it takes years and years of just specializing that one tool. Um, but essentially, you can track things to great extent, and now you can associate it with your AI traffic to really paint a picture on, how much of your sales or your actually converted leads are coming from these sources.
Can you also maybe expand on a little bit? In one of your slides, you talked about that real, vibrant, human-led content being um, one of the ingredients that AI tools particularly enjoy, scanning. But so, on one hand, we have all these Chat GPTs that create content uh, no worse than a human can write. So the challenge for the website owners is, what do you mean by human-led content? Just how do you come across like real? Do you are we talking about this Q&As like in summary blog posts? Are we talking about audio video content? Would that actually boost any chances with any of this search new search tools? Or um, if you can just kind of because the
Yeah.
challenge is real, like any kind of content nowadays can be created either in 2 minutes, or you can go on your sweat and spend a couple hours writing some really amazing, post for your blog on the website. Is it worth that, the effort? Is it worth spending 2 hours writing the post that you can create with ChatGPT?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say first of all, the most important thing is to kind of know your industry and your ideal client and how they what they're expecting. So, for example, if you're offering a legal service or a financial service, they're probably looking for a tone and style that's a bit more professional, a bit more serious, and detail focused. Whereas maybe if it's a bit more of a just a product you're looking to buy, you can have a bit more of a joyful or a bit more excitement within the style of content that you're writing. That's a big aspect of it for sure, and definitely leads to building that user trust. I would say another thing is once you sort of establish that, you can with a lot of AI models now, you can build a custom GPT, for example. So you can feed it these instructions and be like, when I'm writing this content, this is how I want it to. This is the message I want to portray. This is the tone, the style I want to have. This is my website, and make sure that all the information is accurate based off my website. You can really get detail with those instructions, and then you can also provide examples of your old content. So I'm sure most of everyone in this chat, right? If they have their blog that they've been running for a couple of years, right? Back then, we were writing most of these blogs by hand. That's a great idea to use that content as a bit of a blueprint that you can apply to your new content. That's AI led for sure, but you want to have that human review. I would definitely say for that. Um, Another cool one that you sort of touched on was the video aspect. So we're seeing it's a bit of a newer strategy, but including videos on pages, for example, like a service page that's related to your actual service. So a video that is covering the key aspects of the service, talking about your business a bit. actually gets pulled into some AI models. And as we're seeing voice search become more and more popular, that's another way to optimize for that, for sure. So, yeah, great question.
Awesome. So let's say if you're a small business with a limited marketing budget, what's the very first thing I should do to start improving geo visibility? Like how much of geo can realistically be done in-house versus needing professional help like like yours?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the easiest and most cost-effective way is maybe getting active in those communities, right? You'll know your service more than anyone, and it's something that you sort of need to do on a bit of a regular basis. It doesn't You don't have to be in these chat rooms all day, but just making sure that you're sort of consistently providing that value will definitely be valuable, and these models will likely pull up your brand. Another big way is content. As we mentioned, making sure that you're updating your content regularly and building out these planned out topical maps. You can be pretty specific with it and get very detailed, or you can have just a basic approach. And then I would say, link building is very important as well. So making sure that you're building those links to your websites and getting placements on other websites is a big one as well. Um, this geo in general is very doable, I think, for most individuals. It just, depending on how much you want to scale it, it can become a bit overwhelming. So at that point, I would say when you really want to grow to the next level, that's when I would recommend reaching out to a company like us, for example, and seeing how we can help and kind of take that that burden off your hands. As you've seen in the presentation, there's a ton of information, and it can be easy to maybe forget things or see if you're doing it the right way. So at that point, when you have that concern, that's when it's probably worth reaching out to someone else to lend a hand.
There's a question from Austin. I think you'll be able to see it in the chat as well. Thanks for the insights, Noah. In terms of GBP, are there certain things I should do to help with GEO? For example, should I be using the Q&A section more often now? Should I try getting clients to say certain things in reviews? Or is it as simple as ensuring the listing is consistent across the web?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, great question. And it seems like, yeah, Austin's covered like most of the key things from the GBP, for example. So making sure that, and most people don't even really know about this because it's a bit underutilized, but there is a Q&A portion of your Google Business profile. And you can answer key questions that most users have. So as we mentioned before, if there's common concerns people have, if you can address those right away, super useful. And we're especially like a tool like Gemini or Google AI Overviews, they'll definitely be referencing that. Another aspect is in your reviews, what people are speaking about, right? If they're talking about a specific service, it'll definitely influence maybe what your reputation is for that specific thing, and then even more detailed if you're this specific service in this location. So if you can get Google reviews that are a bit more detailed, it's always more beneficial. You want to make sure that they're from real customers that had good experiences, of course. But if you can always just make sure that just to let them know if they're writing a review. If you can give me a nice detailed review, that'd be much appreciated. That's always a good approach. And then, yeah, and also making sure that those listings across the web are consistent is huge. I would say not only for geo, but also for your local SEO efforts, right? If you want to make sure that your Google business is ranking higher and not getting kind of stuffed at the bottom of the line, making sure that the info across the web is consistent is a huge trust factor. Because if they notice that, oh, maybe in this case the address is off on a couple websites, it sort of hinders the trust of these search engines. So definitely making sure that that stays consistent. Yeah, very important.
Wonderful. I'm not sure if it's a question, but a comment from William that's in the Q&A box. Well done. I'm old. My summary of this retail issue is speak to your niche market, the people you already know are among your clients, and in the manner they would like to speak. So
Yeah,
I,
yeah. I would say well said. That's a It's a great way to kind of summarize it. And yeah, making sure that that you kind of build that dream client for yourself, right? You see, I want, I want to find leads in this area, or people are looking for this service, and then sort of tailoring your approach to them, right? Through your content, through the discussions that you're having online, through the mentions of your brand. Exactly. I would say I'm glad you got a good grasp of it, and that approach will do you well.
Do you think GEO will eventually replace SEO, or will the two coexist as part of like one broader strategy? Um,
Yeah, that I think that's the age-old question that everyone is wondering right now. Obviously, there's no clear answer. I would say, and I would like to think that I don't think Google is disappearing. There's still going to be a long, long period of time where people are relying on Google, especially for specific searches, right? Where AI models come in and are really handy is when people are doing a bit more of those detailed searches, right? So they're looking for that service that needs to have match this criteria. That's when they're going to resort to these AI models. So I almost look at it as its own traffic source. So the same way that people are going to do SEO, paid ads, Google ads, things like that. AI models are sort of a new source of traffic where I think there's a great opportunity to get a ton of traffic from. Not to say that, within a year from now, your traffic from Google is gonna be 0. I'm sure it'll continue to be very important, and we still do it for our clients because we do believe in SEO as a service. But we do highly recommend that people get ahead of the curve and start implementing an additional geo focus as well. Yeah, because you're just sort of covering your bases and you're opening more channels, not putting your eggs all in one basket per se. So
Here's an interesting one, because the majority of our clients are Canadians. So, for Canadian businesses specifically, do you think there is an advantage or disadvantage in how AI engines index local content?
yeah, I would say overall, it seems like most of these models take a similar approach as opposed to, the US might, for example. The only benefit I would say is that I'm sure it's a lot more competitive in a lot of these US areas, right? In Canada, it doesn't seem like there's uh, the focus on AI has grown as quick as in the US, and that comes with the population approach as well, right? So I think the advantage there is that you can kind of spread your service across more channels, more models, and I really believe if you cement yourself in at an earlier stage, it'll be much easier than trying to catch up later on when every other business is looking to rank all for the same type of search. So yeah.
A question from Francois. Is it a good idea to refer the Q&A answers with a link to the blog within the same website, or keep it with a short answer?
Yeah, so you can I love the idea of building out, content pieces that answer that specific question, and it'll likely do even better than just having your that Q&A portion at the bottom of a page. Not to say there's no value in that, but yeah, we're seeing more and more of that where there's specific blogs that go in great detail on the specific question that someone has, right? And then with that, you can link internally to another related question someone has, or you can link to the service that this question is related to. So yeah, I do believe there's value in building out detailed content on specific things.
You also touched on this in your presentation. Specifically, you brought up an example that if someone had uh, a blog that they used to have 5 years ago, it may be a good idea to revisit it, to update the content, to make it fresh and relevant for today. But the question here is, how often should someone revisit or update uh, its content to remain sort of GEO like friendly?
Mhm. I would say the approach I would take is first of all, make sure that you're always planning content ahead, so you have a kind of a repeated routine that you're uploading new content that is freshly written. But the value of digging back onto your old blogs is seeing first of all you can kind of get an idea of which blogs have performed well in the past for you. and then that shows you that there is intent for this, there is demand for it, and those ones I would start off by refreshing, right? And first of all, I'm sure most of the people in this call might have some blogs that are not very evergreen. So it's maybe a guide for their service in 2016. So just updating the date in there and making sure that the mentions of maybe current events or things like that are updated. Then you have a fresh piece of content there that already has the skeleton for it. So I would say it's a good first step to kind of clean through your old content, and then moving forward I would just mainly focus on updating with new content and tailored to your geo approach and your ideal client or lead.
It's something that you may see more of since you guys work with so many different clients. But are there any industries or types of businesses that stand to benefit more or less from this geo optimization that
Yeah,
you've
very
seen? Yeah.
very good question. And if I'm being completely honest, there's some industries that you would have never thought would get clients through these traffic sources, and they're coming through. So it's really hard to tell right now. I think it's the same approach where people thought AI would get rid of like manual tasks first, and then it took over the creative aspect right away. So it's really hard to tell of like are people, you would maybe think people are not searching through AI to find like the coffee shop near them, but they are oftentimes, right? Or any industry it may be. So I think any type of industry stands to benefit from it, because if it's very surface level, someone is a very simple restaurant or a service. People are still going to want to look at their options or see what people are talking or thinking about it. Or if you have a really detailed service like a software that only works, offers this service in one industry, you also get the benefit there where if you have a very specific service that these AI models are going to go and grab and give to the user. So I think there's benefits for all sorts of businesses, I would say on my end.
I have a couple more questions off the top of my head, if I may. I
Yeah.
know it's sort of like it's
No,
longer than 10, 15-minute Q&A, but
for sure.
while we have you, why not ask?
Yeah.
Um, very early in your presentation, um, and actually it's an interesting fact, you said the average prompt for, let's say, ChatGPT is 24 words versus the traditional, SEO search, which is like a few keywords, like two, three, four. Um, and then you went on to talk about try to optimize content like on your end, on your website, uh, that would provide for a very specific answer to those very specific prompts. But there could be such a huge variation of certain prompts around surrounding one particular service. Like you brought up the example of roofing, but if we talk about supplements or the business of cars or even hosting, in our case, there's so many different use cases surrounding those things. You cannot possibly write 200 blog posts answering of each specific prompt
Yeah.
case. So how do people deal with that situation? How do you choose which prompts are like more relevant than the other?
Yeah, great question. And I would say, first of all, the most important thing is to make sure you have your like focus services. So even if it's not starting with everything you offer, making sure, hey, this is our moneymaker. Let's focus in on this service and building content related to that. After that, what I would do is, as we mentioned, build that ideal client, and try to figure out what are they looking for, what are they asking themselves, what are their concerns, and then based off that, you can build out your map of content. That's all different pieces of content related to this one product, service, offering. I would say that's the best approach, and that's why having building those topical maps is always a bit helpful, because you can get kind of lost in the storm of it all if you're just on the fly trying to come up with new ideas. But if you can pre-plan ahead all the different potential concerns, inquiries that people have, and list them out into different content pieces, It'll be much more helpful, and it'll kind of keep you on track. Another great way to plan this out is, use these models themselves and ask them, hey, if I'm planning out to write very detailed content on this service, what are the main things I should cover? And then from there, it should definitely give you some good examples, and then mixing that in with the experience that you have of what people are looking for will be super helpful. And yeah, one more thing I would say is really making sure that um, you can also explore just the more detailed, the better. And I'm a big fan of going for that low hanging fruit, right? Even within traditional SEO, I'm a big fan of targeting specific locations, neighborhoods sometimes. So in this case, I really don't believe it's ever too granular to a certain extent, of course. But yeah, there's all that means to me is that less competition, right? So it might be a bit less leads, but they're more specific and there's less people that are looking for them. So that would be my approach.
So a lot of similarities with traditional SEO in a way when it comes to
Yeah.
content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I really want to keep it under an hour. I have one last question, if there's no other questions. What are some of the mistakes that you see people make when they're trying to adapt to this AI-driven search?
Yeah.
And can you actually make are there any mistakes that we should kind of like absolutely not do?
Yeah, there's definitely a few I could think of. First of all, when you are having your brand mentioned across the web, don't do it in a spammy manner, for example. So
Mhm.
don't go in every Reddit community and just spam the business your business name with, oh, they're the best at this, things like that. Keep it natural. Maybe even if some models can't detect that now, they will for sure detect it eventually. Some never fall for the quick fixes because they always get figured out and it just hurts you in the long run. um, and then same thing with online, like if you're getting high authority links, make sure that they're from quality sites, not spammy sites. That remains important. And then again, I think something that can really hurt your AI presence is, like I had mentioned, try not to cover topics that you have no business covering, right? Make sure that you're speaking within your industry, within your service, within your business, within your geographical location that you're serving, and try to only focus on that. Because as soon as you start talking about other things, you're just confusing the model. It's going to think that, wait, why are they a roofing company, but they're talking about, I don't know, gardening, for example.
Mhm.
So really making sure that you stay within your lane, I guess, and build your content structure and your context structure as well, related to that. I will say, if
Mhm.
anyone else has, maybe even a few weeks from now, you think of something, you have a question, you can feel free to email me. My email address it'll be my full name, like noah.desmarais at seoplus.com. I'm always happy to chat about this stuff and give you some quick tips. So feel free to let me know about that if you ever think of anything. I'm always happy to help there.
I'm going to join Jan Stevens, who wrote that. Thanks for the presentation, very relevant. I'd like to um, join her in thanking you for your time and for, again, giving us some really cool and relevant insights into the GEO, kind of bringing this, the gravity of all these tools up front, and what we can do. Um, Thank you so much for the presentation, and I hope that in one way or another, you'll get some people asking you more and more questions directly by email, as you mentioned, or potentially maybe even in future sessions or
Yeah,
webinars that we may organize. Who knows? 2026 may be all GEO.
never know,
They'll be like
never know.
driving 50% of all the search out there. Who knows? We don't know. Thank you very much for everyone who attended, everybody who asked questions. It was such a pleasure to learn and to have you with us. Thank you so much. Until
Thank
next
you,
time.
guys.